as a book early, the very important thing is to have the book on display first. So welcome to Indiana.
Thrilled to be here.
It's day 3. Have you had any fun interactions?
I've had, oh my goodness, are you kidding? Well, everybody's really, really sweet. To me, that's what makes a con, you know, the personality of the people in the city. I've been here a time or two before. I'm pretty sure we came through with the national tour of Camelot, and then back in the early 90s, I'm almost positive, although this is a blur, I was with a band way back when, and I'm pretty sure we played Indianapolis, the Pipe Fitters. And my buddy Bill Allen from Rad is here too, so he was in the band with me. We had a lot of fun back in the day. But yeah, no, it's everybody's been really sweet, and it's always so touching when poor folks who break down in tears. You know, I can't believe he's right there in front of me. I just waited by Ritchie.
How often does that happen?
A few times a con, okay. You know, and you know, it's somebody pointed this out. It's been 38 years since La Bamba came out, so you know, it's been 38 years of people yelling at me from across the street, "Not my Ritchie!" Thank you. First time that's ever happened. Thank you. Appreciate you doing that.
Well, since you just talked about your band, I wanted to talk about a little bit of your musical adventures, including The Masked Singer. Who saw Lou on Masked Singer? Okay. So he was the Mantis.
I was Mantis, yes.
How
I
did
put
you...
the man in Mantis.
Yeah. You did a lot of like really fun rocky songs.
It's, you know, it's interesting. A lot of people, they always, you know, they go, oh, you go on and you can choose any song you want. No, you can't. You know, they only license a certain amount of songs, and you'd be surprised at how sort of limiting, you know, the song choice category is. And they had designed the Mantis with the leather jacket, you know, and the kind of Springsteen red kerchief and everything. So they really kind of had a persona for that character. And that's what we went with, you know, old-time rock and roll, and then the Kinks song and whatnot, you know. Whereas I would have loved to have done some, you know, like 80s English Invasion, you know, alternative, The Cure or something, which would have been a lot of fun. But, yeah, they had that whole sort of aura about that character. And what was funny is that a number of people who did see it, they go, I knew it was you, I knew it was you. All 4 judges I know, I've hung out with, you know, I've spent time with them. I actually performed at the Hollywood Bowl with Nicole Scherzinger and Apple to App of the Black Eyed Peas. He did a fundraiser for Filipino hurricanes that had been happening. And she, at one point, literally said, I feel like I should know who this is. It's like, well, yeah. You know?
Their reactions when you unmasked were some of the best on the show. They were all so flabbergasted. What was it like for you to see those reactions and have that, like, you fooled them all?
Yeah, and I thought the clue package was like so obvious. You know, it's like, well, come on, you know? And there's a lot of people looking for you, by the way, just so you know. Where is he? I don't know. But so I'm going, how can they not know? But their guesses were sort of hilarious because they kind of were like all around, you know. Somebody said, you know, Kevin Bacon. Somebody else said Dennis Quaid, Springsteen, which makes no sense. But you know, that definitely, you know, actors who sing category. I think somebody guessed Johnny Depp at one point, and it's like, okay, you know, you're going all around me here, you know. But it was fun. It was really fun to see the reactions. And once again, like I said, I know those guys, and they're really lovely people.
How did they get you to do the show in the first place?
I had actually turned it down a couple of times, to be honest. I've also turned down Dancing with the Stars a few times, which is like, I don't know. But my daughter Indigo, who's 17, it's her favorite show. It's her favorite show. And then they asked the last time, and Indigo was like, "Okay, Dad, you should do it." Okay, it's like, all right, fine, you know. So it was pretty much for her to get a kick out of it and to be in on the joke, you know, because she knew it's not exactly like I could lie to her. Well, I'm going to L.A. for a couple of weeks, honey. What are you gonna do? I can't tell you. You know, if I were to say that, she'd go, Masked Singer.
What was it like inside the mask and have to sing and dance with all of that on?
Freaking hot.
That's what they all say.
They literally gave me the dry suits, to put on underneath. I said, I'll be fine. No, first rehearsal, I was drenched, and they very, very seriously do that thing where you have to wear a mask. You have a hoodie that says "Don't talk to me." The crew doesn't know who you are. It's really an incredibly well kept secret. You get taken there in a car. A PA comes and brings you the mask and the hoodie. You put them on in the car so that when you walk across the lot, nobody knows who you are. They take you straight to your trailer and you hang out there until it's time to rehearse, and then you put all that stuff back on again. And what's funny is when I was doing old time rock and roll, the first one, my hair was a lot longer, and I was wearing a balaclava to keep it, off my forehead. So I do a little spin at the top of it, and the freaking balaclava slips down over my eyes. And I can't see diddly. And the show is live. And I can't stop and go, I can't see, guys, hold on. No, so thank goodness we had choreographed the whole thing, and there were stage lights on the edge of the stage. So I just stuck to the choreography and, kind of went in between the lights and hoped I didn't run over a dancer. So that, in my mind, it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I thought, this is live. You go back to your theater training. It's like the show must go on. So keep singing, dude.
Wow. What was the most surprising part of being part of the show that you weren't expecting?
The audience. The audience makes it's a huge thing. And they say, it's not a singing competition. My goodness, some of the people that have gotten knocked out early, like Dionne Warwick or Shaka Khan, it's like, are you kidding me? And like a football player goes farther than them. It's like, it's a popularity thing and song choice, to be quite honest. And so when I was doing the Kinks song, Girl, You Really Got Me Now, right? I'm looking out, and that particular show, I'd say half the audience was under 20, and I thought, they don't know this song. They don't care about this song, And so I knew I wasn't going to get any votes, and so I knew I'd be on the bottom for that. And that was just, examining it from the crowd appeal, point of view.
Awesome. Love to hear the behind-the-scenes stories of shows like that, because everybody wants to know, is it really that big of a secret?
It's huge. They're serious about that stuff, man. It's crazy. I had no idea who else I was on the show with, Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'm a book girly, so I do want to talk about your book, The Tinderbox. So for anybody who hasn't seen this book already, give us a little sneak peek at what it's about.
Yeah, this one. It took like 10 years to write. Off and on, my day job kept getting in the way.
As they do.
Right. My wife is an amazing illustrator, and there's like 30 illustrations of hers in this. There's a sequel to it that I also have at the table, the hardcover, that came out this last November. But when we first started dating, she was reading some of the stuff that I'd done, and I was getting to know her and her artwork. And she was like way cool before anybody else. She was into manga and anime in the early 90s, and now it's huge, But she used to have to go to the comic book store, or order it, through the mail or whatever. I don't even think that online didn't exist back then. But she had done these wonderful frames because she was going to do a graphic novel based on Hans Christian Andersen's The Tinderbox. And so she chose one of his obscure fairy tales for a reason, because The Little Mermaid and all those other things, those are really well known. So I saw them, and because it was manga, obviously a real Japanese influence, and it reminded me of Star Wars and, like Obi-Wan and all the sort of samurai Akira Kurosawa influence that, that had on George Lucas. So I said, well, this is a movie. Let's do this as a movie. And Game of Thrones hadn't happened yet, so I set it in space because, hey, space movies usually do well. I wrote it, realized after I'd written it that it was far too expensive and nobody was going to give me that much money to direct it. So my manager said, well, write the book, and then you will have, develop the world and, put your stamp on it. And so off and on wrote the book. Craig Johnson, the author of the Longmire mysteries, we became very good friends, and I gave it to him after a couple of seasons of doing that. And I said, am I wasting my time? And I'd only written like 3 chapters at that point. And he read it, and he goes, dude, you got to finish this. You really have to finish this. And And it's interesting, the magnetized broadswords in this were Craig's idea. Because I always thought it'd be really cool to have your broadswords magnetized, you know. So yeah, and that plays a big turning point thing in here, but also a nice plot device in the second book. So at any rate, this came out in 2019, did really well. The reviews were fantastic. A lot of people said that they wanted more from that world. And we thought we would like raid the fairy tale world again, but suddenly, out of the blue, Yvonne comes up with this idea that literally feels like it was pulled from between the lines of the first book. It was so organic, so authentic to the original story. And I wrote that one in less than a year because that one just kind of came out. And she has done a bunch of other illustrations for that. It's also an audiobook. R.C. Bray and Julia Whelan did the first one. They alternate the male and the female perspectives in the chapters. And I do the second book with Erica, and I believe her last name is Johnson. But that was a lot of fun, you know, doing being able to read it myself. So fun.
Are there any plans for book 3 in the series?
I have a concept of an idea, but I haven't wrapped my brain around how to do it just yet. I think I know what I want to do, and I certainly know who the two lead characters of that one would be. That you know, a lot of the characters from this one are obviously in the second one. Some people die.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And then from the second book, the little girl who's on the cover, I think, would be the lead in the third book. Yeah, she's Hester, and she's, you know, she has visions. So at any rate, yes, there's a thought on that, but I'm actually working on a different book, a book that I wrote in college, and I look back at it now, and it's like, dude, you know, you were a pretentious 20-year-old. You know, you really thought you were all that. And so I go, okay, that's bad, that's not so bad. You know, the idea was always great. The writing was not nuanced, you know, and it was a bit repetitive. And I think I've become a much better writer. So I'm rewriting it, and actually it's going incredibly well. I'm thrilled. Plus, the story also would afford Yvonne the opportunity to do some amazing illustrations, and I think we would want to go full color with these, you know, with the new ones. So, at any rate, continuing to write, you know.
The illustrations in this book are absolutely beautiful. So full color, here for it.
I know, right?
You've done some screenwriting as well. So how does your book writing process compare with your screenwriting process?
That's an excellent question. Because I wrote the Tinderbox first as a movie, you know, the plot was laid out, the dialogue was already all there, and then I would see the movie in my head to be able to sort of, you know, describe what was going on. Then, you know, the novelization of it had to be so much more detailed. You know, what are they wearing? What are they eating? What's the weather like? You know, all of that stuff that really fleshes out, you know, the book. Not to mention the internal thoughts of everyone and literally what their motivations are that you don't get from the dialogue. Rhett Bruno edited the first book, and it's funny. The one thing rookie mistake that I was doing is that if any of you are writers, you know, the first draft of the book I head hopped. And it's because as a director, it's like, well, I want to know what that character's thinking, and I want to know what that character's thinking, and I want to know what that character's doing. And so I would, you know, flip point of views throughout, and it's called head hopping, where it's like that, you know, it becomes cluttered and it's not so clean. And so I learned, you know, how to put the perspective of any given chapter, which isn't always the hero's perspective. It's sometimes a secondary character who's watching something going on, you know. But the dialogue remains the same, but the perception of what is happening changes, and that was a really great lesson. And it's also why the second book, you know, went much more smoothly, because Rhett was he's an author himself, and he's the head publisher of Athon Books, and so he was really great with the fundamentals.
I once talked to R.A. Salvatore, who's a legendary sci-fi fantasy writer, and he talked about the head hopping as well. And when he started, they told him no. And now he's been fighting for that for so long, because we all watch TV. We grew up with TV, so we read books differently. And head hopping isn't as confusing to the reader anymore as it used to be.
Exactly. And, so I've read a couple of books since then that go, well, they're head hopping, and they seem to be, think it's okay, and with some, some major, Neil Gaiman head hops every once in a while, J.K. Rowling. So both pretty controversial these days. Yeah, I know. Yeah, sad to hear that. But, yeah, once again, it's finding your own voice, but the rules are there to be broken sometimes. You know what I mean? It's interesting. You do it on purpose. And when a lot of times when I'm writing, I'll write a sentence and the stupid grammar check or the this or that will go, "Are you sure you want to do that?" "Yes, I want to do that. I know it's not grammatically correct, but this is a line of dialogue, and this is how this person talks." So.
You've also voiced a lot of audiobooks.
I have.
Especially the Jack Ryan series. Do you have any favorites that stand out to you, or any moments in those stories?
I did 4 Tom Clancy novels, and I think the one thing that I took away is that I now do many, many more accents than I used to do. I mean, the Clancy novels were. I love doing them. The gig was great, but holy moly, is that man long-winded? I would do the abridged version, which is 800 pages, but the unabridged would be like 1,000. And so here I am for like 3 weeks, 10 hours a day, doing those things, man. And he's all over the globe. So I'm doing Russian, and I'm doing Hong Kong, and I'm doing Australian. The whole 9 yards. And so. They were a lot of fun, but Ricola was my friend. Yep.
Do you feel like your voice acting process and how you approach those projects is different than your narration projects?
It's what I love is people go, oh, do you like being a writer or directing? Are you is that what you really want to do now? And acting will always be my first love. Is it theater? Is it TV? Is it film? And my common response is my favorite genre is the genre of employment. And so, right, 4 kids, alimony. Anyway, oh God, it hurts so much. It's funny, being theater trained, I have a degree in theater from the University of Texas at Arlington. Early on, that was my approach to the art, and I look at all of it like it's different branches of the same creative tree. I'm a storyteller, and so techniques that you have on stage are different than techniques you use in film, and the same goes for doing character animation voices. It's very some of them are very charactery, some of them are a little more straightforward. It's learning new tricks all the time. And so a lot of times, like with, the narration, it's my voice, it's my reading voice. It's, something that I hope, doesn't put people to sleep as they're listening to a book. But, every once in a while I have to, do character voices to delineate, the characters in a book, like in the Clancy one. So there are different, different approaches to whatever, platform you're on. And continually learning more and more about it. I'm a little bit of a neophyte when it comes to the voiceover stuff, but yeah, some people brought the Spectre thing out, which is wonderful, and I've done some video games lately too, which was a whole new thing. I'm in Call of Duty, Black Ops 6. And it's hilarious because they asked me to shave so they could put the sensors on my face, and then they put a full beard on me. Yeah. I can't even grow a full beard. I look like Ben Affleck in Argo, But hey, but they captured my face, and it was really weird because when I first showed up, they had literally already, it's all storyboarded, but they literally already shot it in Poland with some Poland actors. So it's like, Lou, walk over here on this line and pick up the water on that line and then drink and then put it down on this line and then walk over here. And I'm thinking, I'm a mannequin. Why am I here? And I finally realized it's because they wanted my face and they wanted how I deliver a line. But all of the physical stuff was already figured out. So that was a little odd, wrapping my head around that.
Controversial question about audiobooks. When you listen to an audiobook, what speed do you listen at?
The one it's recorded at, whatever. I mean, there was one. I don't do a whole lot of listening. I love hardcover books. I read a lot. My wife is a voracious reader, and she just finished my friend Chris Bojalian's latest book, The Jackal's Mistress, which literally just came out last week, and she loved it. So I'll be reading that when I get back home. But there was one instance where I did an audiobook, and they sped it up because it was really thick. It was Last of the Mohicans. So yeah, to get it on fewer discs, they sped my voice up, and I thought, wonderful. Here is prepubescent Lou Diamond Phillips reading The Last of the Mohicans.
Chingachgook went into the forest.
I feel like technology's evolved a little bit now, so it
God,
doesn't.
I hope so. It
Like,
was
I
ridiculous.
listen at double speed, and most of the time it doesn't feel too different from actual voice.
Okay, good.
But
Thank
maybe
goodness.
that's just me. I don't know.
'Cause I
If you
sounded
guys read
like
audiobooks,
I sounded like the freaking chipmunks, you know.
maybe back with that one.
took away a little bit of my gravitas, if you will. Yeah.
One of my favorite on-screen characters of yours is Gil Arroyo from Prodigal Son. I was livid when they.
It's too soon.
Exactly. I was livid when they canceled that show.
Oh my God. I first of all, I love that show. It's why I live in New York now. Moved there to do the show. Loved that cast so much. I officiated Tom's wedding in New York. We became so close. Bellamy and I had also done a movie called The Night Stalker, where I played Richard Ramirez, and she still worked with me again, which is lovely. But I adored that whole process, and I think COVID was probably responsible for us getting canceled in the long run. The second season we shot during COVID, and it cost Fox another $20 million, and they just didn't want to do that anymore. So it's a real shame. Sadly, I was literally getting on a plane, and by the way, those of you who saw the series, it ends on a cliffhanger.
The worst cliffhanger.
Well, it's what network, and they're just cruel bastards.
Awful.
They approved the script, they approved the cliffhanger, and so we all assumed, well, obviously we're coming back for season 3, and because who would do that? And so,
Awful, terrible people.
I was literally getting on a plane to go film Easter Sunday with Joe Coy. And that's funny because I had to quarantine in a hotel room for 2 weeks to work for 2 days, which was crazy, but it was Joe Coy, so I showed up. And I got a phone call from Chris Fedak, the producer, writer, creator, and I thought for sure he was calling to tell me when we were going back to work, and he goes, no, Lou, they canceled us. I said, that's really funny, seriously. When are we going back to work? He goes, no, they canceled us. And I just couldn't believe it. Fortunately, there were a lot of free drinks on the plane because I was just, devastated. Really, really very sad about that. And one other fun little note, Gil Arroyo had a different name to begin with. And I said, you know what, can we make him Filipino, part Filipino? And have a name that is, because a lot of Filipino last names are Spanish, as well as, because of the Catholic influence and everything. And I gave them a list of names, and they loved Arroyo. And that's actually my little shout out to then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who gave me a citation in 2004 for my work with the Filipino war veterans. So I thought, what, that's just a nice little Easter egg that's in there.
In your mind, what would Gil have been up to in season 3?
Oh, I kind of know. Me and Jess, man. I think me and Jess would have gotten hitched, which would have created a whole different dynamic for me and Malcolm, and her and Malcolm. So, and certainly should Michael. Michael only ever did year-long contracts, so they ended the second season because they weren't sure he was coming back, But if he would have come back, that would have, I'm sure, created a really, really interesting dynamic between our two characters.
You've played a police officer in so many different shows, but then in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you got to be incarcerated. What was
I've
it
been
like
incarcerated
flipping?
a few times too.
What was it like flipping that in the comedy setting?
First of all, beef, baby. Street flavors, picante beef. Southwest chicken. First of all, it was a blast. I mean, most of the time, I will say yes to comedy without even reading the script. You know, Psych, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they came at me and say, yeah, whatever, I don't care, fine, send the script. But the answer is yes. I'm Emmy nominated for a comedy, a really wonderful little short that was called Crossroads of History, about Columbus encountering the Taino people for the first time. It's funny. But in both Brooklyn Nine-Nine and Psych, it was hilarious because I'm playing these badasses, these really, straight-faced, straight guys with attitudes. And Andy Samberg and James Roday, they both were allowed to improv and to ad-lib and to do, different things. I don't know if I got through a single one of those takes without cracking up. I mean, those guys had me busting up all the time. And I was like, God, can we use that take? It was so good until I lost it, So it was just an absolute blast. It really was.
Especially when you're talking about like trading ramen for a cell phone in jail. Yeah. If you were to trade something for a cell phone in jail, what would you want?
Wow.
Instead of 100 packs of ramen, street ramen.
Like you, probably a good book. Exactly. That way I could hide in my cell and just read and not go get beat up. Or worse.
I mean, sometimes a jail cell sounds really nice because then it's quiet and you can read. Exactly. And you're not going to get distracted. Yeah. Sorry to my husband. But so let's get to some audience questions. What's your name and what's your question?
Hey, Lou, I'm Christy. Followed your filmography a long time. I'm an educator, so I can't tell you how many times I've seen Stand and Deliver. But I absolutely love The Big Hit and also Young Guns. And I was wondering, of those three films, do you have any favorite memory from any one of those films?
Oh, my gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, a bunch. First, Stand and Deliver. Yeah, thank you. His buddy's decomposing in my locker. And the reason I'm in Stand and Deliver is Eddie Olmos. I mean, after I did La Bamba, which I only got paid like $6,000 for, and I gave half of that to my mother, by December of that year, I was almost out of money, and I was going to have to move back to Texas. And I landed an episode of Miami Vice, and in that episode called Red Tape, by the way, Viggo Mortensen is my partner, and he ended up in Young Guns 2 with us. And Annette Bening is the girlfriend of the bad guy. So a lot of us, appeared on Miami Vice before we kind of made it big. And I did one scene with Eddie, and Eddie had done Zoot Suit with the Valdez brothers, Luis and Danny. And so he knew I was, the lead in La Bamba. But the funny thing is that here I am, an unknown kid from Texas playing an obscure Mexican-American rock and roll star who is a footnote in Buddy Holly's story. Nobody was, beating down the door to give me a job. So Eddie literally says, what are you doing next month? I said, you want to have lunch? And he goes, I'm making a film. It's a very important film. You have to be in it. And it was, he gave me a number, and it was the number to Ramon Menendez, the director. And that's how I got in Stand and Deliver. And interestingly enough, I have a film coming out that's premiering at the Miami Film Festival, and it's called Aguadilla. And it's directed by Tom Muska, who wrote and produced Stand and Deliver. And Tom is a professor of film now in Miami. And he wrote this beautiful film noir. It's like a Steinbeck novel. And he co-directed with his son, Alex. So that premieres in April in Miami.
Great. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
And The Big Hit, yeah, lots of stories there. All about love, baby.
Hello, my name is Frances. So I was wondering, over your career, are there any particular skills that you may have had to learn for a role you're playing that you thought were quite interesting, or something you didn't think that you would learn in your lifetime, or something that that you were kind of happy that you got to learn because of that character?
Tons of stuff, tons. I mean, first of all, I don't play the guitar. I really don't play the guitar. I had 1 week. I got cast on a Friday before we had rehearsals on Monday, and then 1 week, 5 days basically, to learn 16 songs, learn all the fingering for the guitar, put on 10 pounds because I was skinny and Ritchie was a little chunkier, and do all the research for La Bamba. So I mean, that was like getting thrown into the deep end of the pool. You would think I would have picked up the guitar after that. No, I didn't. And because I had to do it so fast. During the concert sequence, they literally had to wipe blood off the guitar because I didn't have calluses, and I was pressing so hard. It was very strange. Thank goodness I had a little bit of time before Young Guns, the first one, to learn the knife throwing, and the Bowie knife. I asked them to put the rings on it so that I could twirl it, because I thought, all those guys are going to be twirling their guns. Well, I'm going to twirl my knife, And the prop guy Peter Bankins sent me all the throwing knives, and so I was out there, for like a month every day, acquiring that skill. For every cop that I've ever, but back in the day. I've done it so much now that I don't have to, do it as often. But I would go on ride-arounds with cops, to learn procedure and to, go to the gun range and everything else. For the first Power, I rode around with Detective Bob Grogan, who was one of the guys who was chasing the Hillside Stranglers, and he was amazing. We were riding around one night in L.A., and he had the police scanner on, and he wanted to take me to a crime scene. And after a couple hours, he went, "Lou, I'm sorry, man. Nobody's getting killed in L.A. tonight." It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. And for the Night Stalker, which I mentioned before as well, I got to hang out with Detective Gil Carrillo, who was the co-lead of the task force chasing Richard Ramirez. So, that's always fun, when you have a role that has something specific to do, because dog sledding in Agaguk, Shadow of the Wolf. For me, for it to be real and authentic and to ring true with the audience, you sort of have to acquire this and become expert at it so that it doesn't look, like, you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
What's your name and what's your question?
My name's Shanice, and Route 66 is just a film that just sticks with me randomly. So I just want to know, how was filming that?
Wow. I'm really thrilled you like it. As a matter of fact, a lot of people like it. And when I go to horror cons, a lot of people like that film. I've never seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I hated the director.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was there. You look at IMDb, and there's like over 160 credits, and out of those 160 film and television credits, there are 2 directors that I will never work with again, and he was one of them. And I just, wow. I think he was on drugs. I think really he was on drugs every day, honestly. But I love Lori Petty. I brought Dale Midkiff on because I directed him in an episode of Outer Limits. Fred, one wonderful cast. We had a blast. The cast and the crew were all staying in the same motel, and we used to blow up a pickle every night. The special effects guys. So that was our entertainment out in the middle of the desert, blowing up pickles. But the director, he would set a shot and then he would go sit in the desert, and it was like Jim Jones because he had dyed black hair and the sweat would come down, and it was just wow. And he had, no disrespect, he had a young Russian wife. I'm sure she was ordered by mail. But she would hang out, and they would go sit there in the desert, and then he would come back, and the poor young Asian cinematographer, he would set up the shot, and the guy would come back and go, "That's not what I asked for." And we'd all be like, "No, that's exactly what you asked for. Don't you remember? You've been sitting in the desert for half an hour." And literally 3 times, the studio came down and asked me to take over directing the film. And I said, I'm not going to, stage a coup. I mean, at one point, the director literally threw a fit and sat in the middle of the road until the studio guy said, okay, just keep going. But I ended up directing second unit for a couple of weeks, and I ended up cutting the film for about half of it without pay. And then I asked for a couple of days to do reshoots, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. I said, okay, well, I'm done. But before I started doing the second unit, they asked for a second unit to do some pickup shots because he was missing so much. And so he put his Russian wife in charge of that. And Lori and I are supposed to do a drive-by at one point, and she's out there with a second camera, And we're sitting in the car, and Lori's just, and I adore her. Oh my God, what a character! She's just ranting and raving about how this this coup with this Russian woman who's never been on a film set is now directing the second unit, and then the walkie-talkie goes off, and he says,
Okay, now I think you go.
and Lori gets on the mic and says, "Is the word you're looking for action?" Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name and what's your question?
Hello, my name is Tammy, and I know you've been coming to Comic Cons for a while, which thank you, because it's a blessing for us to be in your presence. And I was just wondering, do you remember your very first Comic Con? And like, was it overwhelming, or did the agent say, you need to come to these things, they're cool? Like, how did it all, come about?
Oh my gosh, I don't remember the first one. I don't remember. Wow. And I will admit, it took some convincing. It took some convincing for me to to do it. I thought, oh, it seems like an interesting situation, right? But I do remember that it was Eddie Olmos. When I found out Eddie was doing them, it was like, okay, all right, sure, cool. Because Eddie's got a lot of integrity and everything else. And what I quickly discovered, and this is why I continue to do these things, I liken it to the stage door. After a performance, you go to the stage door, you sign autographs. You've just had this experience together through a performance. I put it out there. Hopefully, I've touched hearts. I've made you think. I've made you feel. And it's the same thing with all of you guys and the films that you've watched. And maybe you have your favorites. Certainly with my career, there's something for everyone. There's sci-fi, there's horror, there's drama, there's comedy. And the one thing that I always love hearing is that when somebody comes up and said, yeah, I watched Longmire with my dad, or my mom took me to see La Bamba, when I was 15, and so these memories that people have because of my work, I wouldn't know that if I stayed in my bubble, and by getting out and by interacting and by talking to people. Not only does it, continue to give me perspective and keep my feet on the ground, but it to a certain extent ennobles the work, and which is why I'll never walk through a role. Every job I take, I don't care what I'm getting paid, I don't care how big the movie is or not, they get my A game, because that's my work ethic. I'm doing this because somebody somewhere will watch this.
Well, La Bamba is very special to me, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We finally get to Waldo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
There he is!
You win.
My name's Kevin Bones. So you're outside Waldo, of course.
Yes.
So I'm here at the comic convention at a White Stripes concert, obviously drinking a red stripe.
There you go.
On the Young Guns soundtrack, I've seen you contributed some vocals about the help of Bob Keane. Well, that was a joke too. Bob Keane from
exactly.
La Bamba.
He's here all week, folks. Yeah.
The Goonies dude.
Bon Jovi asked me to sing, a few things, and there's some native chants, and I do some backup vocals. At that point, I actually had become, a rock and roll singer with my band, the Pipefitters. We had actually played Farm Aid and had opened up for Billy Ray Cyrus at Five Things. We did, national tours and things like that, but yet never recorded an album. Big regret of mine. I loved doing that. I've sung, obviously, quite a bit since then. I was on Broadway doing The King and I, Masked Singer, The Ranch. That is my voice in The Ranch. It's not me playing the guitar, but I am singing. And then a few of the Disney shows I've done. Elena of Avalor and Firebuds on Disney Junior. I sang, some songs in both of those. So I love doing it. One of my favorite memories when we're shooting Young Guns 2, and John hung out for a couple of weeks to sort of, soak up the ambiance. And he's in the movie. He gets shot coming out of the pit that Kiefer and I are in. You can't mistake that hair. So one night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they had originally wanted to license, Wanted Dead or Alive, and John was like, no, man, let me do something new. And so he came and he hung out with us, and one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning in a night shoot, he knocks on my trailer door and he goes, come to Emilio's trailer in about 10 minutes. So he got all of us, that were on set that night, Kiefer and Emil, and then the producers and John Fusco, the writer. And he sang Blaze of Glory for the first time on an acoustic. And it was just crazy. It was just amazing.
That's cool.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, what's your name and what's your question?
Hi, Lou. Dan Wahardo. My entire life, people have told me that I look exactly like you.
I
so
can see it.
It's great to meet you.
You're a young guy.
And
Yeah, young, good-looking bastard.
appreciate you.
Yeah, I remember that back in the day. I was cute. It's so funny. On February 3rd, the anniversary of the plane going down, my daughter Indigo, who's 17, she had never seen the movie, and so we watched it for the first time. My daughter turns to me, Dad, you were hot. Oh, you're a sweetheart. Anyway, I cut you off, brother. What's your question? Other than, wanting to say how good looking you are.
Do you think that I look like you?
All right, well,
Yeah.
I do think that you look like me. I totally get it. Absolutely. If I ever need a, young me in a movie, I might have to come looking for you. Thank you. You bet.
Are you familiar with K-pop at all?
With K-pop? Oh, God. Are you kidding?
So there is a member of the band 17 that his name is Vernon, and he looks like young you.
Oh, wow.
And he's from New York, and then went over to Korea to make music.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that guy up.
Yeah. When I was looking up old videos, I was
Yeah.
like, hey, he looks so much like Vernon.
It's interestingly enough, I do have a script that I wrote with my friend Bill Allen, who, like I said, was here, and Bill and I started an acting class together. Bill was Brandon Lee's best friend, and Brandon used to hang out at my house all the time. And we do have a script where there's a young Brandon and a young Bill, and there's a young Lou Diamond Phillips in it. So if we ever get it made, I will be looking for 26-year-old Lou.
Okay, so look into Vernon.
Exactly. Do you guys know the 5 stages of an actor's career? Okay. Who is Lou Diamond Phillips? Get me Lou Diamond Phillips. Get me a Lou Diamond Phillips type. Get me a young Lou Diamond Phillips. Who is Lou Diamond Phillips?
We've got a couple more minutes, so I do want to ask about the Wiggles, because do you guys know he was on the Wiggles?
I'm the caramel wiggle.
How did they get you to do that, and what was that experience like?
It's funny because I've been on a lot of kids show stuff. I mean, like comedy, if it's a kids show, I will more than likely say yes. I was on Sesame Street a few times. Yo Gabba Gabba, I've been on stage with them before. The Aquabats, I did their show as well. The Wiggles, I have 4 daughters, and so grew up with the Wiggles and all their stuff, and they did a U.S. tour, my people got a hold of their people, and ended up meeting them backstage, and became fast friends, stayed in touch, did a couple of things with them, and then I was in Melbourne, Australia, doing The King and I again at the Princess Theatre down there, which was wonderful, and Anthony and the new set of Wiggles, Lockie and at the time Emma, Simon, they all came down to see the show, Captain Feathersword. And so they came and saw the show, and they said, "Hey, listen, we're recording a bunch of videos at the rock and roll preschool. Do you want to be the principal?" And so I flew up on a Monday when I wasn't doing the show and recorded that with them, and glad I did.
I loved it so much.
Oh, yay.
We have one more question. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Chrissy. What is on your bookshelf at home? Oops, sorry.
Oh my goodness, I read all kinds of stuff. Craig Johnson just sent me his latest. I read First Frost a few months back. That was fantastic. really, it took Henry and Walt back to when they were, 20 and on their way to the Vietnam War. So the books for me during the filming of Longmire was such a touchstone because there was so much in the books that never made it onto the series, but I was able to, use them in my preparation for it. I'm currently reading, God, what's her name? T.J. Walker, I think it is. Falling by T.J. Walker.
T.J. Newman?
It was T.J. Newman, thank you. Thank you, it is T.J. Newman. It's fantastic.
She was a flight attendant and wrote it
I
on napkins.
I know, and it's brilliant. I mean, if this, I'm sure I would be shocked if it hasn't already been optioned for a film because it reads like a screenplay, and it takes place in real time. It's fantastic. I'm about halfway through that. I'm waiting. My wife has just read Chris Bojalian's latest, The Jackal's Mistress. She loved it. So as soon as I get home, I'm going to literally going tonight to Lake Tahoe to start a movie tomorrow. So I'll be out there for a few weeks. Don Winslow, read the whole trilogy. If you haven't read the trilogy, what is it? City in Ruins, City of Hope, City in Ruins, City on Fire. The Danny Ryan trilogy. Austin Butler's going to be playing it in the movie. Those are amazing. Danny Ryan, Don Winslow out Hemingway's Hemingway. With his brevity and his cleanliness of writing, it's really kind of, once again, it's very instructive. I went back because I hadn't read it since I was in high school. I went back and I read Animal Farm again because I thought it was apropos. So I did. Let me see. There's a few of these. I've read all of her books. Wonderful author, Amanda Skenendorf. Amazing female lead characters, historical fiction, which I happen to be, one of my favorites. Ken Follett's one of my favorites. So whenever he's got something out, I get it. But yeah, a pretty voracious reader, and so like I said, who was it? Was it Stephen King? Somebody said you can't be a great writer without being a great reader.
Accurate.
Yeah, it's very accurate.
So now you all need to go be great readers and go get his book and go visit him down at his booth.
What's cool about this one and the hardcover of the second book are at the table. I only have a few left. My wife, Yvonne, signed it because she doesn't do these things. There are like less than 100 of these books out there with her signature and mine. So, yeah, that's kind of cool.
So go get you some. Thank you so much to Lou. Give it up for Lou.